Hey everybody, it's Brian Coley, the Movie Whisperer, and this is a place where we look at the intersection of our story with our movies. And today I am so excited about this video because we're going to be looking at the 2020 Oscars and see how they actually foreshadowed 2020 as far as our cultural story. So I'm excited to rewind the clock. I know nobody wants to go back and relive 2020, but let's go back to February of last year and look at what were the nominees for the Oscars in 2020. So here they are. The Oscars of 2020 look like this. We had The Irishman, Little Women, Jojo Rabbit, Marriage Story. Of course, Parasite wins. Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 1917, and Ford versus Ferrari. So this is the palette that I had to work with months before February. I was analyzing it, looking for themes, looking to see what themes came out of all of these movies that maybe they shared. And you will be excited to see what was the theme that came out of it. In fact, I have a video because every year I would go and tell the theme that comes out of the Oscars at Pinewood Studios here in Atlanta. They're now called Trilith Studios, but they were so generous to allow me to come. And last year we did this, we kind of blew it out, did this huge party that we called an Oscar Salon, in which during commercial breaks, I would talk about the theme with different subject experts, from people about race, people about politics, religion, all kinds of things. We talked about it that night of the Oscars in relationship to the theme that I unveiled. And so here is the video of me unveiling the theme for 2020.
To remain a we, it seems like these movies are telling us that in the midst of an escalating war and battles, for the sake of our children, we have to test our devotions to determine if we will be our brothers and sisters' keeper.
Now that's probably a lot of gobbledygook that you didn't get all at once. But basically what I was saying was we needed to test our devotion to see if we would be our brothers and sisters' keeper. In fact, just to give you a little bit of behind the scenes of my process of analyzing the Oscars, here is a little bit of that process. So these are different bubble, each bubble or circle is a theme that I saw in movies, and the number underneath it is the number of times it shows up in movies, not in a single movie, but like 8 movies have to say about this, or 9 movies. You can see the biggest one was devotion, loyalty, and allegiance tested. All of the films that were nominated had to do with that. And you can see some of the higher ones are like war and division and battles and trenches, you know, which we definitely know happened in 2020. And then there's another one, the purple one, which I want to talk to, which is children in the balance having to deal with grown-up things. And so those were some of the themes I saw. The reason I think that the purple one is so important is I do believe that when we look back in 5 to 10 years from now at the events of 2020, we will see that what was at stake was our children, that the way they viewed how we handled our devotion to each other, our allegiance to each other was significant. And they were watching things that were way above their pay grade. And that's what you see in these films. There's several children who are, you know, sons or daughters who are dealing with things that are way above their pay grade and watching things that, you know, that show them the testing of devotion. So I want to go through each film real quickly because I want to show you how this theme of devotion being tested plays out in each film. So let's go with The Irishman first. In The Irishman, you've got Robert De Niro's character, and De Niro's character is caught in between Pesci, who's like the mob guy, and Jimmy Hoffa, which is, you know, oh my gosh, I forgot. Al Pacino. Yes, sorry. Al Pacino. So here, De Niro's character is caught between Pacino's Jimmy Hoffa and Pesci's head of the mob. And the whole movie, he's dealing with his devotion being tested to these two people. And, you know, just to show you, his daughter is watching it all, and she's being jaded by the fact that he's dealing with his devotion being tested. And of course, it ends in a cautionary tale where it doesn't end well as far as his devotion being tested. And you can try to find a gravesite to see, you know what I'm saying there. So next one is Little Women. Little Women, Jo, who's the main character in that movie, she's going out and she's going to be a writer, and she goes to the bigger city, and all of a sudden her sister has an illness, and she has to come home and take care of the family. And so her devotion is tested the entire movie between her family and her desires for her career. Jojo Rabbit, you have Jojo, and it's probably the icon of devotion being tested. So you got Jojo, and he's a member of Hitler's young youth, army. And so he's really devoted to Hitler. And then all of a sudden, there's a girl that he finds in the attic, and she's a Jew. And now he's meeting her as a human being and realizing his devotion is going to be tested between his allegiance to Hitler and his allegiance to this Jewish girl. And then Marriage Story, you have a married couple who are dealing with their devotion to one another and to their family and to their child, who's dealing with things that are way above their pay grade, his pay grade, and they're testing their devotion between their careers and their marriage. Parasite is a movie that won this year, and it is so perfect as far as timing because it was teaching us what it looks like when we fail at being devoted to one another. So this movie is all about sort of a dog eat dog, where it's all about a family that's two families that's we got to figure out which one is the parasite to another. But ultimately, it's all about kind of taking opportunity and survival over being your brother and sister's keeper. Joker, definitely a world of chaos in which, especially for him, the reason he turns bad is because there's no one to be devoted to him and who he is and his special needs. 1917 is all about literally a brother who's going after his brother and going to be his brother's keeper by coming out of the trench and going into no man's land to find his brother and save his brother's battalion. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as well as Ford versus Ferrari, you got these two brother-like main characters in which their devotion is tested throughout the whole movie of will they stand up for each other in the very end. So these are the movies that were that palette and how it just amplified this one theme of will our devotion, when we're tested, will we be our brother and sister's keeper? So when we look at 2020, right during this time was two events that were happening in culture that I went, look at this, it's already happening. And those two events were, the first one was the impeachment. And so we were in the middle. I thought 1917 would win the Oscar this year because I felt like we were in the middle of wars and battles and everybody was in their trenches and nobody was willing to go into no man's land except for one guy, and that was Mitt Romney. And Mitt Romney tested his devotion to his party and decided that he was going to be, to go against that and actually vote for impeachment. So I thought here it's playing out like 1970 is going to win because it's playing out with the impeachment. Of course, 1917 did not win. And another event that happened that was testing devotion during this time was Harry and Meghan. So you have literally devotion to the crown or devotion to each other as a married couple and with each other. Are they going to be devoted to each other or are they going to be devoted to the crown? So that was playing out in the middle of all these Oscars. And I was like, it's already happening in our narrative. But little did I know that we were just months away from a pandemic that would ultimately test our devotion. I mean, think about it. Parasite was all about testing our devotion between our money and class. It was all about that kind of idea of class warfare and testing our devotion, whether we survive. In fact, I have a video to show you, like, this is me talking that night with my friend Adam. And Adam, he doesn't get a word in edgewise, but anyway, this is me telling him how, I don't know how this is going to play out, but it seems like Parasite has something to say about this idea of testing our devotion. So here's a little clip of what we were talking about.
Parasite shows us a cautionary tale of what it looks like when we're not our brother's keeper because we're just trying to survive. We're just trying to get that opportunity. I don't know. I just feel like there's probably something that might happen this year that tests this idea, I don't know what it could be. I don't know how it could play out even beyond the election.
I don't know how it could play out even beyond the election. Little did I know that the pandemic would show us this test of our survival and opportunity of our economy and money being tested against our devotion to our fellow human beings and their welfare, their physical welfare. So that became the huge test of our devotion in 2020 as we started out, was with the pandemic, was economy or people? Which one would we choose? And of course, I think we did really well. In fact, the dramatic question that I saw for this year was, will we remain a we? Now, that's kind of scary because in the last 3 years, the dramatic question was, will we become a we? Like, will we be a we? But in these movies, they're all about pre-existing relationships, and will they stand at the end? Will they remain a we? Which is kind of scary when you think about going into 2020. I was going, oh, what is this going to be like if the whole dramatic question is, will we remain a we? Again, little did I know that we would deal with so many cultural events which would tear us apart as a nation. So, of course, we're doing pretty good. In fact, we had signs to prove it. We were all in this together, get through this together, stronger together. We definitely decided that we were going to be our brother and sister's keeper. That was a choice we were going to make. We didn't make the choice of our economy. Instead, we made the choice of people. And we made our healthcare workers our heroes. And so it looked like the answer to will we remain a we was yes, it was going to work. Until about summer came along and we were getting tired of things like masks, maybe. And suddenly masks became a debate. And suddenly masks became the symbol of our allegiance to each other. In fact, there's a set of people who are like, we're going to wear masks because we're devoted to, with this pandemic, to our brother and sister and being our brother and sister's keeper. And then there's other people who are like, no, my civil liberties and me and what I'm about, and the I thing was, it's all about my civil liberties, and that being tested against devotion to my brother's keeper. And then, of course, then people started getting skeptical about, should we have shut down the economy? And suddenly that debate came in, and we started dividing and not being a we anymore, because some people said, let's open up the economy versus have it continue to shut down, that people's lives are affected in different ways, and we're testing our devotion to, is our life worse because we're shutting down the economy more than the physical aspect of what's going on with our health? So that's being tested and dividing us. And then, of course, this event alone could speak to our devotion being tested beyond the pandemic and beyond what would be the election. And that was the events of George Floyd. And so George Floyd dies, and suddenly we have a racial reckoning in which we look and look around and go, are we our brother's keeper when it comes to people of color? How can these things happen? How can, Black Lives Matter, right? We started looking at, are we our brother's keeper when it comes to race? So that alone would have been enough for us to test our devotion as a country to see if we were going to, really be our brother and sister's keeper. But then, of course, the election happens, and it's not like any other election. I thought it was just going to be partisanship and, as usual. But then this election turns into fraud, supposed fraud, and suddenly is Stop the Steal. And we end up the year with, will we remain a we is very palatable. Like, people are talking about civil war, and we have a capital being sieged because one group of people are saying one thing about, our story, and another people are saying another thing about our story. And we're testing our devotion to whether we can be Americans together and whether we can find a common narrative. I mean, it's just been really amazing how this theme has played out so strongly in 2020. So I want to leave you with a little bit of hope, though. Not the hope that it's just that wow, isn't the Oscars cool that they foreshadowed this, but also the hope of what the Oscars landed on as far as these Oscar films landed on. So I'm going to bring back this slide again, and you'll see the films that have a yellow rectangle around them. Those film in fact, I want to add Marriage Story to this because I think it belongs with the yellow. All the ones that are yellow end with the characters remaining a we at the end. And then the three other ones, The Irishman, Parasite, and Joker, are movies in which they're cautionary tales. The characters do not remain a we at the end. So I guess the biggest hope that I can think of in this is that most of the films said that we will remain a we, and it looks like we might remain a we after all. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I hope I convinced you, and you can tell me in the comments whether I did, that the Oscars are relevant, that they do potentially foreshadow our story. And I want to tell you even how transcendent and supernatural this is, which I'm going to do a video soon about who's behind all this. But I just think that, all these films were made years prior to this and distributed. For them to come together to this palette to express this theme that would play out so vividly in culture, you got to ask, like, who's behind all that? So we're going to explore that in an upcoming video. But thank you guys for watching this and watching this video about the 2020 Oscars. And we'll see you next time on, that sounded so corny. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time on, I'm just not going to say it, The Movie Whisperer.